Hey guys, Jehuty here, and today I'm going to show you how to learn any character you so desire in Tekken 8. Yes, you heard that right. You see, the thing is, Tekken 8 does a good job of explaining its mechanics to you. However, the simple fact still remains that we have 32 characters as of now, and each of them has a massive move list. So, using Victor as an example for this, I'm going to show you what kind of stuff you should pay attention to and break them down step by step. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first point was originally going to be the last point, but it seems to be important to a lot of people, including beginners, so we're going to talk about combos. I don't want to talk too much about them, but what I want you to understand is that you don't need to go online and watch these crazy combo guides. The game provides enough for you as it is. It has the sample combos, and it even gives you something more. It gives you the combo challenges, and these increase, of course, with difficulty, and what will happen is that you will find something you can execute and does enough damage for you. Reason I deter people from watching online videos is that in many cases these combos are either very situational or they're inconsistent, and the truth be told is that you'll be using one or two combos for the most part anyway. One thing you could check online, of course, are the staple combos for each character, but more importantly to me is that you check your low parry combos, because this game of course doesn't show you those low parry combos, and even I haven't optimized those for Victor, hence why you're seeing Lee. So let's get into the actual meat of things with pokes. So what are pokes? Pokes are relatively fast moves that do little amounts of damage but are therefore safe on block, and in the case of the low pokes are relatively low risk when they are blocked. Yeah, so for most characters they have access to a generic set of these. Of course, the one poke being the one jab or the two jab, which come out very relatively fast in both cases if your character has access to it. Of course, a down forward 1, which is good to keep opponents in check, and then of course space control with down forward 4. And then on the low poke spectrum, of course, we have access to the crouch jab, and then of course the generic full crouch 4, and lastly while rising 4, which is also like 11 frames for most characters. Yes. The other cool thing with the pokes, of course, is that you can combine them with stepping. So you can do a poke, feel out your opponent, and then step so that you can evade linear moves. It's very practical because in many cases they are relatively safe and they're also not really negative on block. So let's head back to Victor, and of course Victor has access to the generic one jab, and with any character at all you should be utilizing this just because it comes out really fast at 10 frames. On block, when the opponent blocks, it's +1, and if the opponent gets hit you are at +8, so definitely your turn. And then Victor also has access to a down forward 1, and the good thing about this move is that yes, it comes out at 13 frames, but if opponents want to duck the highs, they still get checked by this, and it's still safe at -1. Then Victor has his low pokes. So he has his down 3, which has some really good range for a low poke, must say. And then he has the down 4, which comes out a bit faster but doesn't have the same amount of range. But in return, on counter hit, he gets this nifty throw animation, which it extends into for more damage. Now I get to talk about key lows, and these are bigger, chunkier lows that do more damage. And you only need one of these per character which you're learning. The idea behind them is that they want to force your opponent to have the urge to crouch guard and punish you just because of how much damage they do. Because the low pokes by themselves are not going to get your opponent to want to do that. Special mention here goes to snake edges because they don't actually fit in this category. Because at first, yes, maybe they're effective, but what you'll find out later on is that they're very reactive. So please don't utilize them. The thing with Victor is that in his case, the only one I'm utilizing is down back 4, because on counter hit I get a full launcher out of this. So let's talk punishers and youth punishment. You see, some people would like you to believe that you need to utilize every single punisher for every given situation which your character has at their disposal. Of course that makes sense because you'd always get the optimal damage in any given situation. However, when you're just learning a new character, that would be too much all at once. So let's break it down, shall we? in Victor's case, I don't utilize the full spectrum of his punishment. So for minus 10 frame moves, I utilize 1, 1, 2, but I also use this for minus 11 and minus 12 frame moves. If there's a bit of distance between me and the opponent and the move is minus 13 or minus 14, I just use 4, 3 for both options. And then the down forward 2 to launch moves that are minus 15 or more. When it comes to moves that are blocked and crouch, I just use while rising 4 as an option, and then moves that are launch punishable at minus 15 or more, I use while rising 1 for full launcher. So to close this brief chapter, I quickly want to touch upon Whiff punishment. What you need to take away for yourself is that it doesn't really matter what you're using as a Whiff punishment tool. It just needs to cover a bit of distance. It can even be launch punishable on block, because if you're utilizing it properly, it's not going to matter because you're always going to hit your opponent anyways. Now, what I'm using specifically right now is Forward 2 for Victor because it covers a lot of distance and it launches the opponent. However, if you're having difficulties with this, you can also use something that's faster, like a 14 frame or 13 frame move, as long as it covers enough distance. So let's start off this chapter with Space Control. Space Control comes in various different forms. But what you need to know is that each character has access to a power crash, which of course armors through your opponent's move and then hits them, and this gets them to of course respect your space. Apart from that, you just need one more move, and in this case I've decided on down back 3 because there's pushback on block and on hit, and as an added benefit on counter hit it launches as well. So the only other thing you have to be aware of when it comes to Space Control is that you want to avoid your opponent stepping you all the time. So you just need one move, it doesn't have to be a big move, preferably safe, that can catch them stepping, and in this case it's back 4 for Victor. It comes out relatively fast. So now moving on, let's talk about pressure engagers or pressure starters. The idea behind this is that these are moves that when blocked by the opponent leave you very much at plus, or even put the opponent in crouch, so that you can get your game plan started or engaged. In this case you actually only need 1 or 2 moves. In this case I just utilize one move with Victor, and that is insert while running 2. Puts Victor quite at plus when blocked by the opponent, so then afterwards he can get his game plan running. The thing with these is that you can also get some good counter hit baiting out of this, so maybe utilize down back 4 to counter hit your opponent in case they want to retaliate. So to start off this last chapter, let's quickly talk about panic moves. The thing with Tekken 8 is that everybody now has a universal panic thing with heat, that being the heat enders or heat smash. So it's a one button thing you can use very well. Apart from that, you just need 1 or 2 moves really. In this case I've just settled for the moves you already heard me talk about: down back 4, which is a counter hit launcher, and of course down back 3, which is also a counter hit launcher and gives me enough space to breathe a bit. So let's briefly talk about stances now. Some characters have a whole host of stances, and even though they're nifty, and I'm sure some of you even picked up some characters because of the stances, first you have to understand your character without the stances before you start incorporating the stances into your game plan. And even then, it's recommended that you use 1 or 2 moves in the stance at first before you try to utilize the whole spectrum of it. So it's the same principle as learning the character without the stances. You start small and then you incorporate more and more of the stances in your game plan. So for instance, with Victor, I just use 2 moves normally. I normally use his stances in the combos, but they're only like 2 moves. I utilize the stomp and then the little jab check thing with the sword, and that's about it, because I'm really not familiar that much with his stance. So that about does it for this video. In summary, you don't have to utilize all the 100 plus moves of your character. Just start off small with focus on the key areas which I mentioned here, and then slowly grow your arsenal over time with more moves. So you know the drill by now. If you like the video, leave a like, consider subscribing because that helps me the most. This is your boy Jehuty, and I'll see you on the next one.
Don't forget to